Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a Triad production. I'm your host, Dr. Graham Taylor. It's a real privilege for me to have back on our show today Dr. William Parham, Director of the National Basketball Players Association of Mental Health and Wellness, and two wellness program advocates and former NBA superstars, Derek Anderson and Tracy Murray. Bill is the inaugural director of the Mental Health and Wellness Program, a position he's held since May 2018. He focuses on working with athletes across organizations, across various athletic levels, and across sports. In addition to his involvement with the NBPA, Bill is a professor in the counseling program at Loyola Marymount University, where he focuses his teaching on a variety of courses, including trauma counseling and multicultural counseling. Derek was selected 13th overall in the 1997 NBA draft. Derek played for the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Clippers, the Spurs, the Trail Blazers, the Houston Rockets, Miami Heat, and the Charlotte Bobcats. He appeared in over 20 playoff games, including an NBA championship title with the Miami Heat in 2006. Since his retirement in 2008, Derek has used his platform to support the next generation of athletes through public speaking, his work with the Rookie Transition Program, and in 2015, he created the Stamina Foundation with aims to empower youth and young adults with resources and life skills. Tracy was selected 18th overall in the 1992 NBA draft and played for the Portland Trail Blazers, the Rockets, the Raptors, the Wizards, the Denver Nuggets, and the Los Angeles Lakers. During his professional career, Tracy appeared in 7 playoff games, including the NBA championship title with the Houston Rockets in 1995. Since his retirement in 2007, Tracy has been an advocate for mental health and athletics and shares his story with incoming rookies and free agents every summer in the NBA's player development program. Gentlemen, I want to welcome you to the show. Welcome. And it's so nice to have you three here.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, Bill, if I could start with you today, and welcome back. Share with us about this program, the NBPA's program, its primary goal, and what you hope for most happening through this program.
Well, thanks again, Graham, and good morning to your audience. Glad to be back here and certainly share the mic with two good friends and celebrity athletes, as you'll see. Phenomenal hoopers, but more importantly, phenomenal men. Again, I've been in this role since 2018. But what I think is real important is that the Players Association, which is different than the NBA as an organization, Players Association is the voice of the players. Started out in 1954, where players are basically saying, we're willing to hoop, but we have to have some different perks, some accommodations for us. And fast forward to 2022, it's an organization that continues to listen to the voice of the players and advocate on behalf of the players, not just for compensation, but also supporting many of their causes, and chief of which are social justice and really working with youth. So this program really has expanded quite considerably. We have a number of services for players. Well, we've also gone in partnership with a lot of the media who really have helped us get the message across that a player's mental health is their mental wealth.
Yes.
And we really are looking to lead the conversation in terms of redefining what mental health and mental illness is. In fact, we've abandoned the old notions of mental illness based on traditional notions of psychology and medicine, which are rooted in models of pathology and disease, and there's something wrong with you. What we've adopted actually is looking at mental health on the continuum.
Yes.
From 1 to 10. Folks on the 8 to 10 range are doing pretty well across domains in their life, their sport, relationships, businesses, etc. And they have a sense of agency. I can do this. They also have a good sense of anticipatory skills, understanding challenges and not backing down from challenges, but embracing not the challenge, but the fact that they have skills to meet them. Then we have players in the 4 to 7 range who, for the most part, are doing pretty well. But there's an area in their life, maybe 2, that they struggle a little bit more with. Maybe it's finances or relationships. Not enough to derail them, but enough to redirect some of their energy. And then we have folks on the 1 to 3 range who are really struggling pretty mightily. And the idea there is to really be pretty aggressive and assertive with interventions. Now, all across the continuum, the last point I'll make, it's not about solely obtaining good mental health and wellness. It's about maintaining.
Yes.
So even for the folks up to the 8 to 10 range, they may be solid right now, but 5, 10 years from now, life happens, the circumstances will change. And so we want to prepare them to be able to maintain where they're at. And likewise with the guys or people generally on the other 2 points of the continuum, we want them to also maintain. And so we're all about teaching, educating, developing tools for players to use. And thus far, it seems to be working pretty well. And we're really excited about the future.
Yeah, I really like that continuum versus either or, the dichotomy that oftentimes we do. Either you are or you're not, or you meet a diagnostic criteria for, or you don't. What you're talking about here with that continuum is you're making a commitment to an investment in that athlete's life over the course of their career, but also probably just over the course of their life in general, to make sure that they get to maintain and be at their peak performance, whether it be, on the court or as a father or as a husband or whatever role they may be in.
That's absolutely correct, Brandon. In fact, the word that you use, invest, we have used, again, the analogy of their mental health is their mental wealth. If your head isn't right, you're going to feel compromised in the other areas. Yeah. And I think what you'll see in talking with both DA and Tracy, they're remarkable in what they have overcome and challenges, and to distinguish themselves as they have.
Yeah.
It is just phenomenal. And that's where you really see the gems of their survival genius.
Yeah,
it's just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, that survival genius, I want to highlight that. That's something that I know, it's almost something you've termed that I really like that. Maybe I could use that as a segue. Tracy, Derek, I would love for our listeners to hear from you both about what you've experienced in your life and your career that brought your attention to the importance of identifying and managing one's mental health.
I guess I'll start first. I started with Dr. Parham when I was at UCLA. I was a freshman at UCLA. So Doc and I have a history, a long history. I had a lot of pressure on me, being a McDonald's All-American, coming into UCLA with all of these expectations of bringing a national championship. We had a really good team there. So the pressure, when you wear those 4 letters, and DA can contest this with Kentucky. Yes. When you're a blue blood team and you got all these expectations, then comes the pressure, then comes the outside criticism, then also affects you. You also have to, you've got to be a student athlete, student first at UCLA. Right. I mean, it's really a tough balance for a 17-year-old kid coming in as a freshman. So also being let off the leash, making your own decisions. A lot of them are going to be bad because you're finally out there doing your own thing. So Doc came in. I had a serious issue with concentrating. I had a serious issue with falling asleep in class. I wasn't used to the workload. I was stressing out because of the workload, and Doc was able to kind of balance me out. It was a long time ago, Doc. I don't remember the exercises, but it was a while ago where I was, we worked together a lot. And back then, the stigma on me was I might have been a little nuts, but that wasn't the case. It was just I needed help balancing myself out. And I think Doc did an excellent job of doing that.
It's interesting, I think very few people appreciate all the things that happen at one time at 17, 18 years old, coming in at that level, from the schoolwork, the pressures, the letters on your jersey that hold so much tradition and legacy, that people are looking for you to step up and kind of just continue that. And these are things that we don't, oftentimes get trained for, or we don't learn how to address and lean into. And it's not that you're born with these things or you're not born with these things. These are things that we can learn, but we very rarely understand that, one, what the pressures are when we first come in. Secondly, that there are some real techniques and some ways to strategize in order to, increase the chances of being successful and letting our potential really kind of begin to kind of show and come out. Derek, how about you?
Well, Tracy was right. The Kentucky, the pressure is always about winning. It wasn't about anything else. The only good thing that I had built for me was basketball was my savior because I had stresses from home life. I didn't see both of my parents when I was 12 until I was 35 and 36 years old. So we lived in the same city, and I literally lived on my own, sleeping in other places, sleeping in gyms, stay with a high school coach. I had 2 jobs at age 15 and 16. I was a single dad for 17 months with my son while his mom was arrested for shoplifting. So I had a whole different perspective on life. I was more about survival. Gene, as Dr. Parham said, my survival was about life. So when I played basketball, it was like that was the threshold for me to release. I got to go out there and play hard. I didn't care about anything else. This is what I poured my life into. So when I heard criticism about, hey, you guys are supposed to win by this, I was like, man, that's nothing. I've been sleeping in empty apartments for years. So like, to me, I was battling the survival mode of life. And basketball was basically my rest haven and my savior. So I felt the stresses of life every single day. When I went to college, I had to go back and see my son. I was getting on a Greyhound to go see my son for weekends and have to come back to school because I had, we get off Fridays, and then get out and go see him Saturday, then come back Sunday for school Monday. I had life struggles, but again, those survival genes kicked in because basketball gave me an outlet. Because if I had all that energy and I wasn't playing basketball, what would I have done? You're in a project housing, low income, survival kicks in. Most people do crime. And that would have been a situation, wouldn't have been my choice. And I think we have to look at now what we do as these young generations, give them a choice and give them an opportunity. So that's what I'm blessed to be a part of the NBPA's program for mental health with Dr. Parham, and having been a good friend with Tracy. I know if I called him, he would know what I was talking about. It wouldn't be like, oh man, well, I don't know what you're dealing with. Like, he's dealt with the pressures of his injury and knowing his career could be over. I talked to him about it, and we could basically be on the same page and not have to worry about it. So connecting with people, like-minded people, is all you need to do, but we got to put that in place. And I think that's what we're doing. I really like that. Tracy, as Derek's talking, you're kind of nodding your head. What are you thinking?
Well, he just touched on the injury that I didn't talk about yet. When I was 14 years old, I was growing too fast, and my body couldn't take how fast I was growing. I was kind of a chubby kid, so I didn't have the structure of my body couldn't handle the growth of it. So my hip joint was growing out of the socket like that and curving just like that.
Gotcha.
So they had to go in and cut this part out, straighten it back up, and put it back into the joint with 8 screws in place, and the bone had to mend back together. So with that being said, I was told before that surgery, I went to 5 doctors that said, my career is over and I'll be lucky to even walk straight again.
Man.
And then that was just some of the top surgeons all over the country, and didn't know that there was somebody in my own backyard that can take care of me. I went to orthopedic hospital, Dr. Stanford Noel. He said, look, I'll fix you up and you'll be good as new. But the whole mental trauma I went through before that, with 5 doctors taking away the only thing I loved in life besides my family, it was traumatic. It was traumatic for a 13, 14-year-old kid who was pretty good to be told your dream is done.
That's kind of a life sentence, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Holy
cow. So that was a tough mental barrel to get over. And then the recovery from that. Physically, DA will tell you, physically, we can work our way back. But mentally, will I ever be at the level I was? And this comes back with every injury. DA's had injuries. It's like, will I ever come back to who I was? Will I ever be as athletic as I was? Will I be able to move fluently? Will I get injured again? How much will this cost me when you talk about professional basketball now? What do the GMs look at now?
That's right.
Am I damaged goods? Will they still see the same value in me? So there's a lot of this going on mentally. It's not just playing basketball. It's a lot different. It's a business. So you're either filet mignon or you're ground beef. And they put you in those categories, and that's tough for a young, ambitious, player that want to, achieve a dream and do his best and provide for his family.
Yeah, I really like that. You're talking about these, Bill, you and I talked in our first show about the adverse childhood experiences. It's an assessment tool that we can use in mental health to kind of identify and kind of name things that we may not normally think of as being adverse because we're living it as kind of our normal. But these adverse childhood experiences really contribute to one's overall, health, particularly mental health. And whether it's you're talking about, Derek, the idea of what you grew up in and what you learned to survive and how you took those moments and you chose the direction you went. Some don't. And I would imagine what you're doing now, you're trying to nudge, young people who are maybe in similar situations in a direction maybe that you went, and coming alongside them with services and strategies to really maximize what their potential might be. Or what you're mentioning, Tracy, this idea of, physical adversity and how one overcomes that very early on. That's not easy. Mm-hmm. And what we do mentally and emotionally with those things. And a lot of times we don't have a forum to talk about some of the thoughts and feelings that we have, because as men, we're not typically encouraged or incentivized to talk about shame or guilt or embarrassment or struggle. That's not part of our social DNA, is it?
No, yeah, because they look at you. Sorry, Doc. They look at you as being mentally weak.
That's right.
That's right. That's the problem.
That's right.
I will add that I want the audience and you, Graham, to really hear what Dee and Tracy are saying. They were kids.
That's right.
Struggling with grown-up issues. Yeah. And they could have gone a different direction, but they didn't. Yeah. Therein lies the hidden genius that I'm talking about. That's right. Nobody really sees that. They look at the story and the drama. But both of these guys were indelibly etched with invisible tattoos of trauma.
Yes.
But nobody knew about it because they made a decision to go. That's brilliance. Mm-hmm. Absolute brilliance. The other thing I want you to hear is that, again, Tracy referenced, we go way back. Understand a 17-year-old kid, overwhelmed as he was, to even come to think about talking to someone.
Yes.
That just wasn't there. I mean, that's just, the stigma was just very present. And the fact that both of these guys had life and lived experiences that would have canceled somebody else's check. They said, no, I'm going to deposit that and use this as the ATM card into my spirit, because I know that there's something bigger on the other end of this. And that's what I want our audience to really hear.
Tracy, Derek, when you guys hear, and maybe even in your advocacy, when you hear this term, the survival mentality, this hidden genius, how does that strike you? To me, it's very empowering, but what is your sense when you hear it presented that way, from these adverse experiences and the survival that comes out of this being a genius strategy? How does that strike you both?
Well, for me, it was basically pretty much what Dr. Parham said. You have a survival gene. You might not ever know what gene you have until you're put in that position.
That's right.
You understand? It's like nobody knows that type of gene you have until it's time for it to come out.
There you go.
Some people might not ever come out. But if you have that gene and you're willing to see it, because we all have some kind of gene of survival. That's what where everyone's born with an innate thing of survival. But what gene do you have to persevere, to not complain, to do something? Because some people may go to jail and then they'll go to jail and they'll come out better people because they've learned a trade, they've learned discipline, they've learned things that they could have learned before prison. So you have things in you, but I think everyone doesn't want to tap into it. Yeah. And I think once you get a taste of it and tap into it, which we've all done as adults, we've all, some parent has told us something that we completely ignored, and then the older you got, you're like, oh, that's what they did. So I think we all have a gene. It's about tapping into it. And again, Tracy and Dr. Parham keep saying it. You didn't have anywhere to go. They would have called me weak. They said, oh, you're just another project kid, or Tracy, you're just a prima donna, or Dr. Parham, you're just smart, so you don't know everything about everybody. They're going to make an excuse for something. But I think our platform is to give everyone an outlet instead of an excuse. Right. And people in this world want to attack you from their own weaknesses. And I think we can never allow someone else's opinion to be our reality.
Yeah, that's really true. That's really true.
I think what's so incredible about Derek's situation, I mean, no parents, man. I at least had parental support, you know, to bounce things off of, and they are able to guide me into a certain situation. Dad pushing me to be stronger mentally, push through it. Derek had to try to figure it out by himself.
Yeah.
And I mean, hats off, bro. I mean, because to come through
wasn't easy.
Hey, I'm sure
I can't imagine.
to come through what you've come through and to be on the other side the way you are now, bro, making it to the NBA and now giving back to young men and women, man. Kudos to you, man, because it started off rough, but you're shining like a diamond now, brother.
Absolutely. Hey, Derek, could I ask, when did you start? I mean, you were living this, so it's like right here, and it's just your normal. And somehow you're finding a way to make it through, you know, what you did early on and where you were sleeping, the jobs you had, the bus ride you were taking, the commitments you had, you know. When did you first start recognizing that these are some pretty impactful things that I'm finding a way to live with and excel in, despite of, you know, a lot of times people think, well, it was the adversity, you know, that made them perform. No, it's not. You know, it's because of the adversity that they reached this place. No, it's despite the adversity, somehow people found a way, you guys found a way to overcome what the adversity was. It's despite it, not because of it per se. But when did you start talking with somebody, Derek, or recognizing that, hey, this is something that maybe I could get some support with and actually see what I'm doing as kind of this hidden genius? When did that start?
Well, when you say what it started, when you're living in something, you don't actually pay attention to certain things. What I did was smile to people and say, yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. They gave me jobs, they gave me help. They you know, people gave me a place to stay. You know, I would work in. It was just very based on my attitude and my positive thought processes that changed people. Because if I had my head down, had negative, people don't want to bother you. But I was always, hey, how are you? Yes, ma'am. And do you guys need any help? Like, I would go up and be really nice. So as I lived it, I realized if I was happy and positive, regardless of sleeping in an apartment door while I'm sleeping against the door, so no drugs, people will come in and take you. You know, I'm trying to think of the positive side all the time, and people responded to that.
Yeah.
That's why we talk about in our mental health. The more positive thinking you get, the more positive can attract to you. But the negative side, I stayed away from it. And until I got to the NBA, when I got my first check, my first birth certificate, like I didn't know anything, like until that 1997 time, I didn't realize I needed help. And I didn't have nowhere to go because I hadn't gone to church. You know, I nobody took me to church growing up. I didn't know God, I didn't know anything. So I literally was just kind of like floating until I got stable in a place where I didn't have to work 2 jobs, go to class, take care of my son, didn't catch a Greyhound, like until 1997 when I got to sit down with someone who was older, who had already been through it, which turned out to be Michael Jordan. He had me hire me as his first player, and he said, hey, I want you to do this, and that. And then I told him I want a lifelong contract. And he's like, what's going on with you? I could actually tell him because he became a boss, he became a friend. So until I talked to someone who had already went through what I was about to go through, the fame, the celebrity, all that, I didn't have anybody to actually have an outlet. And only then could I even talk to other people because I felt like he wouldn't have judged me because he was a basketball player. Like if I would have met Tracy, I could have been, Tracy, how's it feel to, you know, have both parents and then your dad pushing you hard as a mud, like almost making you don't want to play. Like I could ask other players, but when you're living in it, you don't know it. But until 1997, I got to the NBA. And then we had chapels in the NBA.
Yes.
And when I started going to chapel and I started to connect with my religious and my spirituality, until NBA, I got to chapel because we didn't have it in college. You know, college, just go to class, go to practice, go hang with your kids, you know, same age people. So I didn't have any leadership throughout my entire life. So from the time I was 12 to I was like 23, I was pretty much making life decisions, bad or good, on my own until 97, the NBA. They gave me an outlet, a platform to actually find out who I was as a man.
Bill, you said before, and I want you to quote it because I wouldn't do it justice, but you can't look at yourself until the rivers slow down or stop.
Paraphrase, but essentially there's 2 things that come to mind that I think are really examples of what both Dee and Tracy are saying. The first is that you will never see your reflection in running water.
That's right.
It is only when the water is still will your reflected image begin to emerge.
Yeah.
more importantly and directly to the point, another mantra I shared is this: whenever and wherever shadows have been cast, it must mean that there's light nearby.
That's right.
Because you can't cast a shadow without light.
And therein lies that
So
hope.
somewhere therein lies the light that DA and Tracy had. They may not have known it, but they had faith and hope. There's got to be a better way.
Mm-hmm.
Gradually, they had others around them. And Tracy had his parents and others. DA had neighbors and friends.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at DA's shirt, AOK, acts of kindness.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to that strategy. That's what we're talking about here. They have the light inside.
Mm-hmm.
The people around them have light. So they were illuminating and shining brightly before they even knew it.
Mm-hmm.
So when they finally got to say, oh, wait a minute, I got something here. Ooh, that star system just came up.
Yeah.
And a related paraphrase is that stars don't come out at night. It is the darkness that illuminates the star that is already there.
Mm-hmm.
So challenges are actually a hidden gift. It's a different backdoor access into that genius about which we speak all the time.
You know, Bill, one of the things you're talking about is in kind of these gems that you're sharing right now is the opportunity and really kind of how essential it can really be to have mirrors in our life. People in psychological, we talk about, you know, you mirror somebody, you give them some feedback, you see some things that they may not even notice, or maybe they're living that's like right here and they don't even see it. And you're able to get some perspective. They kind of go, oh, I never saw that about myself. Or I didn't realize that this is actually what I was doing, wasn't it? There's my genius that lies therein. And you're talking about the opportunity. I would even imagine through your guys' advocacy, all three of you, that you get to be these mirrors and you get to help people discover some things they never even knew was part of who they were and part of their DNA.
That's absolutely true. It is about discovery. See, my belief, clinically and professionally, and DA and Tracy shows this brilliantly. They don't lack anything. People feel down, get anxious, get spaced out, and they feel like they lack, that there's something wrong with them.
Yes.
We're here to say that there's nothing wrong with any of them, that the best place to hide actually is in plain sight.
Yeah.
These guys have the drive to say, you know something, there's something different here. And they are also the embodiment. A lot of times people say life happens to me. Both Tracy and Diego say, damn, again, why me? But life doesn't happen to you sometimes. Life happens for you.
Yeah.
And when you really look at what these guys are doing now, it's short of phenomenal. They have shattered the statistics. They both should have been dead or doing drugs or doing something not cool.
Yeah.
These are pillars of the community. And we've long since stopped talking about hoop. We're talking about human beings.
Yes.
And in the context of today's world, as African American men,
yes,
we don't talk about that. But that's sort of an understood dynamic that we just sort of embrace.
Mm-hmm.
But that just really illuminates their genius even more.
Yeah. Really
crazy.
good.
The crazy thing about that is, you know, Doc hit it on the head. You know, you do have that pressure of being an African American man, and we have the opportunity to try to not just better our lives, but better everybody's lives around us. That's an extra pressure that you're putting on yourself too. I don't know if DA has dealt with this. Doc mentioned, you know, the light in you, and you know, it's like sometimes your teammates see that light and they don't like it. Like DA and I, you know, we probably could have been starters, you know, our whole careers on certain teams. That wasn't our role, but we tried to be a star in our role.
Yes.
And sometimes that's not even liked because we're too ambitious, we're too aggressive. We see something and we go at it, but that's from our past too, of everything that we had to go through, where we come from. We're still trying to move forward and push through the glass ceiling. And that's not liked amongst the locker room sometimes. And I think the chapels is what helped me. because there were sometimes I felt alone in locker rooms. So, but a lot of these cats don't understand that we all gone through the same thing, and we all need some type of help to to move forward, and a lot of guys in the locker room don't even talk, not about stuff like this. So it's like everybody's struggling with something, but they're hiding it.
Yes.
At least with the chapels, I was at least being able, just like DA said, to tap into the spiritual side to where, okay, now I can go attack this differently, and not with negativity. I can attack it with positivity. Now,
Yes.
not feeling like a victim, I can feel better about the situation and then attack it.
Yeah, that's really good. Derek, as Tracy's talking about this, I'm reminded that if you were to kind of break us down, there's that physical side of who we are, there's that mental, psychological side of who we are, and then there's that spiritual side of who we are. Those three kind of make up that three-legged stool that kind of make us, kind of who we are and what we carry around. You both have talked about the importance of chapel and that spiritual side of who you are as men and players and how it's come into your life. What was so important about the spiritual side being brought in as some of the mental health pieces were being addressed as well? What's the complement of that?
It was pretty much what Tracy just said. Like, people in the locker room don't talk and they don't know each other.
Yeah.
On the spiritual side, you just didn't care anymore. That was that, well, I'm going to be your brother whether you want to or not. I'm going to reach my hand out to you because God did that for us. So we're reaching our hand instead of walking around the locker room as normal guys.
Yes.
We're that tough macho, how he deal with it. When you're spiritual, you want to help. You're always eager to help. You get fulfillment from helping.
Yeah.
We became different men at that point. And I think that's what translates into all three of those things you spoke of. And I think that's what it's all comes down to. What are you getting to grow from? Because if you think about it, when you grab your car, set of keys, you never think about getting in a car wreck.
That's right.
But if you see a car wreck, you be like, man, I hope nothing happens to me. Oh my God, I hope so. You start to think. Yeah. So when you project things that you want people to see of you, that's what you do when you get into the NBA and the chapels, the spiritual, the reality, the growth. You project the things you want things to be seen of you. Greatest compliment I ever gotten. Let's go with you. I was helping some guys on a bus, and we were going to help the survivors of Katrina. Kobe, Shaq, Kevin Garnett, everybody's on the bus. I get on the bus, and a guy, Kevin Garnett, yells out, "Hey, DA, say a prayer for us." He started laughing. I said, if that's what I'm known for, I'm doing my job.
That's right.
And that speaks volumes. And instead of you speaking all the time or talking, your presence and your actions speak a lot of words more than anything else.
That's really good. Really good. You guys are talking about this idea of working so very hard and so intentionally and with purpose to change the culture, to create a culture that you want athletes to have access to, and maybe even kind of change the paradigm, this cultural way of thinking and being in athletics. And there's a real emphasis, isn't there, Bill, on changing this whole narrative so that they can have access to talk. And how does one kind of break through that stigma and embrace, rather than it being something problematic, that this is an opportunity for me to really enhance my growth by addressing these areas? So talk about the cultural importance of this and changing that. And also then just kind of reiterate the narrative that you want people to start having about the benefit of the mental health component of one's success.
Well, the mental health is something that everybody has. Nobody doesn't have it. We don't talk about it. In fact, we have been incentivized, both players and non-players, to not talk about it. And when I say incentivize, I use that word very intentionally, because there's a heavy cost for coming up with your authentic experience. DA and Tracy tell you, the window of opportunity in a professional sports and the NBA is 4 or 5 years. Now, both of them had distinguished careers and a lot longer, but they know that it's finite, so they have even more incentive to keep it packed down. You got to put it in the context of race. Social class, politics. We were taught, I was taught, and I'm assuming DA Tracy, 2 things. African American, you got to work twice as hard for half the benefit.
Yes.
I mean, that was just there. And because we learned it so young, it was normal.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know why that was being told to us.
Mm.
As we got older, a mentor of mine said, you know, the key to mental health is having options or believing in your ability to create them. So the only reason we went to school and did what we did, and what I'm sure DA and Tracy do, they wanted to develop options. But the other thing is, getting back to the spiritual piece, as I practice, two things always influence me. I heard a minister talk about sort of the standard question that we as psychologists are trained to understand. When you're an adolescent, you begin to ask the main question, who am I? I heard a minister say, you know, that's the wrong question. The better question is, whose am I? And I thought about that. I'm a child of God. God don't make no mistakes. I've always remembered that since I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And related to that, bless my dear departed mom, we were raised as a single parent, 4 kids. But she said, you know, sweetheart, I want you to work hard, bust your butt, but at the end of the day, let go and let God. Really have that trust that you have something there. It's not going to come when you want it. In fact, she also used to say, the Lord's not going to come right when you need him, but he's always going to be right on time. And that has always played out. And so weaving this together is important. The last thing I'll say, it is about changing the narrative.
Yes.
Again, we have to look at the history of why this language of pathology has emerged. And we don't have time in this broadcast to do that, but we need to change that.
Mm-hmm.
We also have to take a look at the comment I made earlier. I'm not convinced at all that professional sport entities or other entities have failed at addressing the mental health and wellness needs of players. The way the system is designed, it has succeeded at not wanting to address those needs. So part of that silent pressure is people don't want to hear it, including owners and GMs and all these folks.
That's right.
Because that's not what you do. You're a man, you got to power through it, man up, and boom, boom, boom.
Suck it up.
That's what you do.
Suck it up, yeah.
But there's a price to the cost of the ticket.
Yeah.
So you got to ask, what is the price of the ticket? And both DA and Tracy said, you know something, I'm invested in myself. I don't know what kind of deposit I have in my bank, but I know something's in there.
Right.
And I have faith that I'm going to tap into it, and they certainly have.
Yeah, that's really good. Going off of that, Derek and Tracy, looking back, if you had been given as much support to train your brain, your mental health side, as you did for your physical performance, going off of what Bill's saying right here, if you'd been given as much support for training your brain and the mental health side of things as you did for the physical performance, what do you think the impact would have been on you guys during your careers?
Go ahead, D.
I know I wouldn't have fouled out as much.
That's a classic answer. That is a classic answer.
I would be so angry sometimes. A guy scoring you, you just go foul him hard. You like, you're not scoring no more. Like, it became just like a frustration thing. Like, I would take my anger out in basketball and football, and I was skinny, but I just go play football just so I could tackle somebody. He's like, man, you're the thinnest dude out here. I said, let me get my aggression out. Just let me get it out. I think it would have helped me tremendously in a lot of other areas, because I dealt with a lot of depression from being with my son, and you know, I didn't know what I was doing. I was 15 with a brand new kid. He's screaming, and I'm over here like, what is wrong with this kid? Like, why wouldn't he just be quiet? Like, and like, I'm holding him, and I'm just like, and I'm in this stress on top of stress. So I just think if I could have went to a teacher and said, hey, I need this, or you know, some family member or anything, that I could have been like, hey, let me help get out of this. It might have been good for me. And Dr. Parham knows now how I'm about with my kids. I'm totally different because I've had 38 years of experience, like, you know, like, or 30 some years of experience of just raising a child. Fortunate enough, I have 6 boys. So I got all boys, and they're all great kids. They're respectful. They say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. So I think I'm giving them what I knew I needed, which more was a positive attitude. I think I could have did that. It would have helped me with some business decisions. I left a team that we were #1 team in the NBA, San Antonio. I was the second leading scorer behind Tim Duncan with 16. I could have stayed there, possibly in a Hall of Fame. But because I was so emotional and didn't trust people, The person who was supposed to sign me back didn't tell the truth. And before I gave him a conversation, I left. I was still used to leaving everything when I was a kid, stay away from the stress, that I didn't think twice. And it could have changed my whole career. You know, staying on a winning team, staying here, staying there. But I made an emotional decision because I didn't have emotional stability or control as much as I would have helped if I'd have had it younger. So I think it's needed. I think a lot of these young guys is needed. And we're going to talk to younger kids now because your habits become your history.
That's right. Man, that's some great insight right there.
Man, that was phenomenal.
That was.
I agree with DA. I mean, you got to look at how you start as a kid, and your that's shapes and molds you as you move forward, right? I was a chubby kid, low self-esteem. The only place I had confidence was on the court. As you move through that, the trauma of the injury, basketball being taken away, the pressures of getting to UCLA and having that pressure and trying to make it to the NBA because my parents are getting passed over on promotions and they're training people to take their jobs, right? And the stresses, of that, it builds up. Yeah. Finally get there. And it's a dog eat dog business. Not everybody in the locker room was for you. You have maybe a vet that will reach around, put his arm around you and help you. Clyde Drexler did that for me. Isaiah Thomas saved my career by giving me an opportunity to go to Toronto. But because of half of the things that DA talked about, not being able to trust people lying to you, I was almost done in 3. Luckily, Clyde helped me. I was in the trade with him to Houston, won a championship, which gave me more value. Isaiah opened the door up there. The rest is history. But I still had those. There was always what's my purpose? If I'm not here to do this, then what's my purpose? And I think that's where the spiritual side came in. That's where trying to remember some of the exercises with Dr. Parham. And I also met up when I was with the Lakers. I was going through a lot. And the pressures of being home, not playing, coming off of a hip arthroscopic hip surgery. So the pressures of that, I was dealing with Dr. Burton Brody. He's also a mental coach. And, I think retiring is another one. What am I going to do now? I dealt with depression a lot. Dave touched on it. I dealt with depression a lot. And the suck it up situation. That was the term that I used to get through it, or my dad used it to push me through it. And I think we all had to deal with that term.
Yeah. And see, I didn't have to deal with depression because I had been busy so much in my life. I was looking forward to retirement.
Right.
When I retired is when I finally felt like, oh man, thank you. Like I retired once and then got called back to work. George called me to come back to Charlotte. I'm like, man, I'm sitting home. It was like November. I'm like, man, I'm done. Like, and that's the thought process of people. Like I was actually ready to quit. I didn't have any depression. I had more depression playing than I did so when I retired, it was finally a breath of fresh air where I could actually be Derek Anderson, not the celebrity, not basketball. It was just, I could be a human being. Think about it. I haven't been a human being since I was 11.
So all the weight,
just do what
sounds like all the weight of that got lifted.
Oh man, when I tell you I actually just sat at home one day and looked at my trophies and started crying and said, like, wow, man, thank you, God. And just cried, like for no reason at all. I was like, what's wrong with me?
Just to release.
Yeah, but that was one of those things you had so much bottled up in you didn't even know. And that cry was more of a like, thank you, more than a pain. And I didn't even know I had it in me. So when sometimes everybody's situation is different, but you have to release. You have to.
Now, see, for me, watching you, DA, I saw you on the court a lot. You played a lot. Yeah. My first 3 years, I rarely played. So I felt like I left a lot that I didn't get to accomplish. You know what I'm saying? I felt like I got kicked out before I was ready. So that's the difference between both of our endings with it.
Yeah, I see your point. Yep.
Yeah, really good things. Bill, we had talked at the very beginning off air about some of the all these things are just such great points, guys. And I so appreciate, not just you sharing about the process, but really being as transparent and as vulnerable as you're willing to be, because that's, I think, the message that gets across here. And I'll talk about that in just a minute, the importance of vulnerability and just being transparent. But Bill, you're trying to take this, I know this summer you guys have got some programs coming up. I'd love to hear about what you're doing this summer and how these guys are being advocates with and for the program, and you as well.
Yeah, brief. We are doing a number of things. Dee and I will be down in Orlando, Florida. The Players Association has a yearly event called the Top 100, where we really invite top 100 high school groups to come down for 4 or 5 days.
Nice.
To really not only go over basketball skills, but mental health and wellness is a core concept this whole time. We also have their parents coming down, some of their parents. And so we have a parent program, and the mental health and wellness component is going to be in there. We will also be in Las Vegas for the rookie transition program, which was a very shortened version of what it used to be back in the day, where we had all the recruits in for 4 or 5 days. We now have 2 days. But the bottom line is that we really are spending the same tune that we do here. The other thing that I want you to really pay attention to, and I participating in a project that the PA, the WNBA, and Fifth Pro, an international organization, put together on social media abuse with professional athletes.
Yes.
Go to the website, the NBPA website, and see it. It is absolutely phenomenal. It is the absolute first published study on the social media abuse that these guys take, both men and women. 80% of which for guys in basketball is racism. A huge proponent is a homophobia. The data are exceedingly clear. And the study tapped into 1,500 posted comments on social media. And the analysis is just phenomenal. So I certainly encourage all of you to read it and really understand the genius that you've seen in both DA and Tracy today, and all of the invisible stuff that goes on that people don't talk about.
Yeah,
but they are forced to manage, and they do so beautifully.
That's right. I want to ask you, Bill, just in a moment about some resources and how folks can find out more about the NBPA. But Derek and Tracy, give me just kind of a last closing word, if you would, each of you. Just to young athletes, those going into high school, those going into college, what would be your kind of takeaway message from your own lives to them?
Go ahead, Dee.
Well, I always put it into perspective of how I live my life. It's called loyalty, and it said stands for living on yesterday always leads to yesterday. So your loyalty lies in what you do. And that's what your life you'll live. So if I had a good day today, I want to do what I did today. I want to do it tomorrow. Be progressive, be positive, be impactful. But if I have a bad day, I don't want to do that. So I got to leave where that's at and start something different. But I'm always remembering what I did yesterday, because my loyalty and my habits rely on what my consistency is every single day. Really? So I try to say happy things every day. I post. I haven't said one cuss word. I've been on social media for over 10 years. I have not said one cuss word. I've wanted to, but I've not said it because I practice my habits. I practice it with my children. I practice it at home. I practice it when I go out in the community. So I don't need it. So I've learned that, like, I've never drank alcohol a day of my life. I've never smoked. I've never done drugs. I've never had a Coke or Pepsi, and I'm 48. And it's because I created habits. So now they can't say you're preaching one way and showing us something different. Really so good. I just tell everybody, just live in that purpose of happiness every day, even if it's a bad day. I watch Sanford and Son when I'm having a bad day or something bad happens, and it makes me laugh. So now my mind triggers to what I'm used to seeing. Yeah. And I don't go to social media when I'm angry, because I get angry at some of the social media stuff. I go to watch a comedy. Now my mind transforms. When I get back to social media, I'm back in a better place. So I just tell the young people, find your happy place and make it a habit of finding that, and you'll find happiness there.
Really good.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Definitely positive energy. You got to find your positive energy and find your positive space every day. Have a spiritual base. Have something you can tap into spiritually that can help you stay in that positive energy. Another thing, if there's negative energy in your life, get away from people who have negative energy. because they suck your positive energy. That also helps with your mental health. If you're dealing with a lot of negative energy, then it's going to affect your mental health trying to deal with somebody else's negative energy. That's or right. Whatever they're going through. I'm not saying don't help people, but the energy has got to be good if you plan on staying healthy mentally. Really good. Really good. I appreciate that, guys. Bill, give us some resources on how folks can follow up with you guys, what you're doing, and learn more about it.
You certainly can give us a shout out going to the NBPA website. Okay. All of our contact information is there. I certainly want to also let your listeners know that effective next month, there's going to be a national lifeline. And if you dial 988, it actually is going to be take you to the National Suicide Prevention Lifelines. For those in the audience who really are struggling, don't have anybody to talk to, go to the hotline. But also in the systems in which you operate, the school systems, the colleges, seek out mental resources and do so with your head held high. The last thing I want to say is stemming on what Tracy just said. I tell students and athletes all the time, at some point, you got to cancel your subscription to other people's issues. You got much to do with yourself, and you just got to take yourself and really discover the hidden genius and talent and wealth, emotional and otherwise, that you have already innately. So with that, I want to thank you, Graham, for your being a host, and Tracy, I can't thank you enough for really being vulnerable and sharing where we're at. Yeah, I so appreciate that. I so appreciate that. It's not uncommon, is it, for us to keep our pain and our trauma locked away inside of us, and it's for a number of reasons. It's out of shame. It's out of the fear of the response of other people, and even the unknown of kind of delving into some of that pain that in order to work through it. But that secrecy and that avoidance simply keeps us kind of imprisoned, really, in that shame and that's and that really prevents us from developing and reaching our fullest lives, of which you guys are talking about today. However, what you guys are sharing today, including your sharing of your personal stories, which I so appreciate, and I know our listeners will as well, what you're suggesting here is that the antidote for shame and trauma really is vulnerability and this transparency that you're bringing. The more we can start talking about it, change that culture, change that narrative. But that takes strength, though, and trust that on the other side of that, working through that pain, that trauma, and through that vulnerability, there is going to be a greater health and well-being. And that's what you guys are advocating and actually living right now. But it also typically takes someone to come alongside us to help us on this journey. And so, gentlemen, I want to thank you for what you're doing in your advocacy to address in this area. And also, it's been a true pleasure to have you on the show today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Graham.
Thanks for having us, Graham.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
It's our pleasure on our side. I also want to thank you, our listeners, for joining Bill, Tracy, Derek, and me today. It's always great to have you with us. Regarding this episode, I want to remind you that it and its resources and all of our other podcasts can be found on our website at triadhq.com/BHT. So go check out our webpage, triadhq.com/BHT, and explore our archive of podcasts and other resource materials. Thanks again for being with us, and we'll look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today.